Okay. Do you want me to just go since there's no music, no beats? Welcome in. It is Saturday afternoon, wherever you are hanging with us. We appreciate it as we open up another slate here on the weekend. Gundacker's in the house, so I already see the ears up there. What's happening, brother?
Year, yeah, happy. Yeah, that's awesome. I love seeing the year.
Right?
Happy
That was like 20
Saturday.
minutes ago. I think Mike, who's producing, bro, opened the chat up like 20 minutes ago. And West B, the first thing we get is that. That's beautiful.
Man, those are the real ones, man. Shout out to everybody in chat waiting, dog. People wait. I tell you what, we were talking about, maybe there's not as many people that watch baseball in the content, but the ones that do, man, they love it and they're loyal. So shout out to them.
Absolutely. We appreciate it. And look, we're not asking much in return. You already know the drill. Thumbs up, subscribe, Stokastic now in the house. So make sure you don't miss anything here as we continue. We'll tell you all about what's going on, Odd Chopper and throughout. But overall, and you even brought this up as far as the slate itself before we even started, just about how the weekends have been a little bit weird, and trying to find some stability, maybe even some normalcy now in these weekend slates, right?
Yeah. Last Saturday, like me and Terry just talked about baseball until we couldn't. And it wasn't like we just lost track of what was on what slate. It looks like this, what we're about to talk about, is linear to both sides.
Yep.
Last week was a little bit more like a chaos, but yeah, I mean, from a real life standpoint, it makes sense to have afternoon baseball. And I'm okay with it from a content standpoint. I like it when the sites are on the same page, and today it looks like they're closer than way closer than last week.
Yeah, you and I had that issue a couple of weeks ago too, where it was just trying to sift through, going back and forth. And here we are promoting our tools and everything, and it's like, all right, we have to go back and forth through like 4 different tabs. So you're right. We definitely have a sense of streamline, everything kind of similar page here. And looking at this 9-game slate that we have for the next hour or so, we'll go through game by game. We'll talk about the pitching matchups and where we can find some leverage, of course, with stacks as well. But is there anything or anyone maybe that you're targeting or just looking forward to talking about the most here on this slate?
No, it's a tricky slate. Thankfully, they're both the same slate, but it's still a tricky slate nonetheless. Yep. Maybe Verlander's the only guy that stands out as someone that might feel like a safe floor, but there's a lot of rough matchups, tough parks, and some pitchers that we're not even sure how long they're going to go, or some pitchers you don't want to touch, like Cueto and stuff like that. So it's still a tricky slate, but at least it's the same slate on both sides.
Yeah, and to your point, and again, we'll go through it specifically, but to your point, there's a pretty wide gap between like 5 or 6 guys on DK that a lot of the field is getting to from a pitcher standpoint, and then the rest outside of like Josiah Gray, who are under 4%. So there's, to your point about just the gap itself in how the field is getting to pitchers, we're already seeing that playing out. So I'm sure that'll definitely be a theme throughout the night, right?
Yeah, and there might be points, and I've done it last night where, a lot of times you just don't like having negative leverage, but a lot of times I'll take negative leverage on a play that I just feel better about, and then I'll try and give back somewhere else. And I might have to take all the negative leverage tonight on Justin Verlander.
All right, well, let's open up here in Baltimore. We'll get to Verlander for sure, but let's open up in Baltimore. Tampa's in the house here, and pretty decent, as you would expect, projected run total for the Rays, just under 5 at 4.8. We've got, Bradish and Springs there. So just looking at the pitching matchup first, we'll get into, how you're attacking at least the Tampa stack. Maybe there's some leverage to be gained with Baltimore, but the pitching matchup itself, and Springs definitely, I would imagine, is going to have the easier matchup. It's just a matter of, again, the field and the leverage that you're going to have to work around.
Yeah, Springs is coming in as my second highest on pitcher right now. I've got him handcuffed to Verlander and a lot of my top lines on DK, and kind of split him on FanDuel as well. So I'm hoping he has a solid game. As temperatures have been higher across the league. This one's only about 74 degrees, so that's nothing too crazy. And Springs has been solid, a 0.91 whip, 301 expected ERA, a 14.2% swing and strike rate on a 26.6% overall strikeout rate. those numbers are pretty doggone solid. And this version of the Orioles lineup, guys that are 3 through 8, Mountcastle through Mateo, they'll give you a 25 to 32% K rate. And that means there's strikeout potential to be had. So I am interested in Springs here. And to his credit, and I guess backing up those numbers, the Orioles only implied for 3.6. So that's really, really strong at 8K. So I do like Jeffrey Springs. Bradish is a little bit more of a tough cookie to crack. He is certainly somebody that his minor league numbers suggest that he'll get better. He will be better. He's, behind Grayson Rodriguez in their pitching prospects, but it's been a rough go of it so far. And his biggest struggle has been right-handed hitters, a 3.63 home run per 9 to righties with a almost 400 average allowed and a almost 5 xFIP. So this is a Rays lineup that doesn't give you a ton of power or a ton of upside, only a 93 WRC plus against righties. And in this lineup, just G-Man Choi and Isaac Paredes have a 200 plus ISO since the beginning of last year against righties. So maybe there's a chance for some of that unrealized potential to flourish here, but he's certainly been in prove it territory for me. And to his credit, the Rays are a sub 5 run total, which on these slates is saying a lot. So I could understand, people wanting to take a shot at 5.7, hope for double digits, but Jeffrey Springs is the apple of my eye in this one. And then I think you could always stack the ballpark and hope for the best, but I'm more interested in Springs's hopefully positive outcome.
So how much, and I think you alluded to it a little bit, but are you getting in? Look, nobody is. They're at the bottom as far as what we have projected pretty much across the board. But do you cover yourself at all with any 1% Baltimore tonight in that regard?
Yeah, and it's slates more, I would say, consolidated slates. This one isn't as small as maybe yesterday. If you get a 6-game slate in your mass entry guy, pretty much just stack every team. You just tweak the exposures. The bigger slates, I tend to trim the fat a little bit. But in personal lineups, I'll have a metric ton of Justin Verlander. I'm gonna have to self-hedge myself, and then also, I'll have free positive leverage on the field as well with some of those White Sox stacks. And the same here. I'm gonna have a bunch of Jeffrey Springs at AK, and it looks like, looking at our top pitcher tool, Jeffrey Springs will be about 27% owned. So yeah, why not go grab 3, 4, 5% of Baltimore stacks and try to push back on the field there, and then self-hedge. The Baltimore stack, much like the White Sox stack, is projected at under 2% owned. So you don't have to give up much equity to be there and have a little bit of insurance inside your own CSV.
Are you capped at all with the Rays stack, or you find yourself pretty much maybe equal to the field there? It's not a ton of negative leverage.
I might come in double. Not double. Rays. I'm thinking Orioles. With Rays 9%. Yeah, I had them at. Let me see. Rays. I had Rays at. I personally have them at 10%. So I'm
okay. Yes, you're a little over.
Yeah, a little.
Oh, it's updated. Yeah. Okay. So I had it 8.4, just updated. It's 9.3. So it's not as heavy, but still, I mean, you're on the other side of it, which was basically what I was leading for anyway there. All right. That makes sense overall. So we can move to our next spot here, right? Anything else you want to clean up there? I think you pretty much attacked.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's something to get used to. These Camden Yards run totals being this low, but this park has helped out, and neither one of these offenses are really killing it right now.
So let's move on, because I don't know how similar it may be, at least for Pittsburgh. So with the Pirates hosting the Giants here, we've got Quintana for the Pirates and then Luis Gonzalez on the other side. So I don't know how much of this here for your approach in this game is going to be a hitter. I'm sorry, did I get that off?
Alex Wood, right?
Oh yeah, you're right. Sorry about that. Yes, Alex Wood, you're right. And then Quintana on the other side there. So I don't know how much you're looking at. I mean, Wood's getting a ton of run here. He's what we talked about earlier with that gap. I mean, this is a perfect example, right? Where one guy in this game is getting a ton of look and the other guy is just not even getting really much of a brush at all.
Yeah, and our numbers really like the Giants, so it makes sense to not be that invested in Quintana. To put in perspective, on this early main slate, whatever you want to call it, the Giants have our highest top stack potential at 10.6%. The projected ownership 7.5%. So there's some positive leverage to be had, but to be the most likely team to be optimal in PNC Park is saying a lot about Jose Quintana. Quintana has almost a 5 expected ERA on the season, 1.3 whip. And he's just really, really beatable, attackable, just a 20% K rate. So I do like, in the last couple of years, the Giants as I affectionately refer to them as my Cinderella stack against lefties. Austin Slater, Wilmer Flores, Darren Ruff, Evan Longoria. Those are just a lot of fun to click on against any lefty, especially one that's going to be a little more contact. So I definitely like that 1 through 4 quite a bit. And it's in agreement with our top stack tool. So to answer your question, though, I'm with the field here. Alex Wood makes more sense to me than Quintana. I currently have no Quintana. Quintana's positive split has been against lefty hitters, and then there's only Luis Gonzalez and Brandon Crawford to kind of help him realize that. So I'm just gonna sit that one out. If he's optimal, he's optimal. Alex Wood is the question here because the Pirates are so bad.
Yeah,
just an 81 WRC plus against lefties. We have seen them. I mean, Miles Michaelis almost no hit him. Carlos Rodon went nuts. This is just like this is like a AAA team, if we're being honest. And there's a lot of potential for Alex Wood here. And it's not like I think Alex Wood is like one of the best pitchers in the league, but sometimes good pitchers beat really bad hitting, and that's kind of what we have here. Once you get past Brian Hayes, Brian Reynolds, and Michael Chavis, this lineup drops off a cliff here, and there's a lot of strikeouts to be had here. So I do like Wood. He's not my second high. Like I said, I'm gonna go after Springs, just hoping that Springs acumen for strikeouts is a little bit stronger, but Wood is coming in as like my 3rd or 4th highest owned pitcher right now. We have him about 25% owned with a 14% chance to be a top 2 pitcher on DraftKings. I'm a little bit closer to the 14%, maybe like 18%. But the matchup makes too much sense here, and we are pretty heavily implying him for the win, minus 177. So it could be better, but our tools like the Pirates to lose this game, or at least like the Giants to really go off. So I do like Alex Wood, not so much Quintana, and yes on the Giants stack. And and this is one of those spots where I don't think I'm not gonna have any hedge Pirate stacks, but 1 through 3 maybe sub stacks would kind of make the pool. I guess Sawinski has a case and Castillo, but this team is really rough to watch.
You do, though, have 25%. We talked about only 5 guys at 25% or higher as far as ownership that we have projected in the field here. So yeah, you're right. I mean, the matchup doesn't justify or scream to justify, but granted, there are some other difficult matchups with some also shitty teams right now, but they aren't at the bottom for the top stack either. So, I mean, you could make an argument to cap it at like 1% just because of a quarter of the field gun is getting to Wood.
Yeah. I mean, process-wise, I agree with that. If we take out, we just let the robots do the talking, right, but the Pirates, the Orioles, the White Sox, all these teams that are projected under 2% stacks, like if you just want to give away 10%, 12% of your equity for those, hedge insurance stacks, I don't think that's a bad process.
Okay. That's fine.
It's just hard to put money on the Pirates. And
you're right. I mean, the reality is going to dominate the process there. You're right. The human element should always come in and check whether or not, we should just defer. Let's move to Oakland here, and Royals, A's, and we can start, of course, with the pitching matchup as well. And look, you've got Cole Irvin on the hill, 7K. And on the flip side, just looking at Brad Keller. So these are going to be cheaper options. And you're going to get positive leverage with both. It's just a matter of how much this might be a hitting game for you versus getting to these guys as cheaper options.
Yeah, this is definitely one of those tricky games. Brad Keller, Cole Irvin, two guys that don't strike people out. 14% K rate on Keller this year, 15.7% on Irvin. These guys are by design pitching to contact, and Keller's doing a better job at keeping the ball on the ground, ball in the park. But this year, lefties have been getting them a little bit. So maybe we're looking at a Seth Brown. The Athletics, kind of like the Pirates here, where you just don't have a whole lot of hope and confidence. And I think the Athletics have less power in this lineup than the Pirates give us hope for. They have a 113 team ISO this season against righties with a 73 WRC plus. So the list gets really, really short for the Athletics when it comes to picking on Keller. But at the same time, Keller doesn't really give me a lot of hope for upside. So there are games that just kind of get washed out of my player pool. And this might be one of those games and we just, cherry pick a few guys to fall. We got Brad Keller with an 8% chance to be a top 2 pitcher on DraftKings. Because of that, there is positive leverage to be had at his 3.8% ownership. I think that's kind of hoping that his 6.7K, maybe he accidentally gets a strikeout going through 5 or 6 innings, ground ball his way in Oakland. Is that what it is? Oakland. And gives you, 2x that 6.7. And I think that's a reasonable take. I wouldn't really feel that enthralled with, him, dropping 25, 30. But I think there's a world where he drops 14, 15 against an Athletics team and maybe knocks on the door of a 20 if he gets a clean sheet in a dub. So I don't think it's a crazy take. And we don't have to give up much equity to say we have positive leverage on what the numbers are telling us. But his expected ERA at 4.62, his whip at 1.35. None of that's going to make you feel great. And really the same with Cole Irvin, a 5.2 expected ERA. He's actually overperforming his underlying metrics with a 3.34 ERA, a $1.25 on the whip, 15% K rate. He's also kind of keeping the ball in the park, but that's not that hard to do in Oakland. I actually don't think he's allowed a homer in Oakland. So he's kind of getting saved in that regard. And he's another guy at 7K. If you're looking for double digits as a SP2 punt to save you some salary, like I wouldn't talk you off that ledge. We have him at a 8% chance of being a top 2 pitcher with 3.7% chance, 3.7% ownership. So he's basically the same play as Brad Keller. It's just how much do you trust them to not make mistakes, because these are 2 pitchers that really don't get to erase Ernie's with strikeouts because of their acumen. So I think because there is positive leverage to be had, if you cap these guys at 6-8% in your CSV and you let her rip, I think that's the proper move, especially if we're letting the top pitcher stool kind of guide us in that regard.
Yeah, and just looking at it from an offense standpoint, it's not as simple as the 2 stacks are right there at the top, and this is leading you towards just loading up with respective bats here. I mean, this may be just a risk across the board, and in a 9-game slate, you may not have to get to as much. And you mentioned the substacks earlier. This may be an opportunity to kind of maneuver around to where you're capping ownership with the 2 pitchers and trying to maneuver with, if it's substacks, or just not relying as much, because again, neither one of these teams are really looked at from a stack standpoint to take advantage of the 2 pitchers we just talked about, including the ballpark itself being an issue.
Yeah, 100%. I will say I'm getting not horrible power numbers for like a Salvador Perez. So if you're talking about substacking Keenan on maybe 2 or 3 of those guys instead of 5-man onslaughts, yeah, I think that's a right way to approach it. I definitely would never want 5 Athletics in a lineup.
Right. That goes without saying. I'm glad you clarified that in case somebody in the chat took what I said and attributed it to you and was like, no. So, it's definitely good to do that. But here's the thing, though. Even the strategy alone, before we move on to Seattle, even the strategy alone, you're applying that to the Royals, but I would imagine you're even doing that to a lesser extent with Oakland. Like, it's not the same cut and paste strategy here with both stacks. You're going to gain a little bit more with what you have with Kansas City, right?
Yeah, so like if you're going to start grabbing some negative, I want to say grabbing some negative leverage, but let's say you believe personally in a team more than maybe some of numbers elsewhere.
Yep.
So like I don't know, for instance, we have a 10% chance on, or let's go a little deeper. We have the Astros a 6.7% chance to be in the top stack. Let's say in your heart of hearts, you're like, well, I think it's closer to 10%. So you're gonna grab that, and you're gonna have to pay for it with ownership. You're probably going to overcome it by getting rid of some just teams in general. For me, like the Oakland Athletics, the Pirates, guys, teams like that, the Tigers, the teams that I just don't like. If they hit 5 homers in their lineup, these are teams that don't hit 5 homers in 2 weeks sometimes. And if they're optimal, then I lose that night. I just start eliminating teams, and that buys me some extra equity in my lineups. And this is one of those. The Athletics are one of those teams. And then if I'm trying to meet or compromise on that, meaning I could never see 5 Tigers or 5 Athletics optimal, but 1 or 2 guys could get stupid. Then maybe I'll nominate them for like a sub stack where it's just 2 or 3 men. And that's like the most I would do for the Athletics.
Yeah. And Anthony asked, and just because it's relevant to what we're talking about here with Kansas City, if you look at either the Phillies or the Royals as a secondary sub-type stack, a favorite, more favorite. I mean, I imagine just overall Philadelphia has the better matchup, but just looking at it in that comparison between the two.
If the question is, would I rather have a Philly sub-stack
as a sub-stack, right? Secondary sub-stack.
Probably the Phillies.
Okay. Just making sure I didn't miss anything. That's all.
Right. Yeah.
That's all. All right. So let's go to Seattle here. And again, we can kind of look at what's happening on the mound first and go from there. So Flexen 7,300. We know that. And then Sandoval on the other side is going to be the pay up option. And, just where we have, again, the 7,300, the pay down option is going to be super low owned. And then Sandoval is a guy that even at 9,100 with this matchup, we're getting a little bit more projected than Wood there. So somebody about that quarter of the field, just want to update it in projections, make sure that I am right there at the top. But basically, again, the theme here being that gap, right, between 2 different pitchers. So are you capping with Sandoval or you're around that 26%?
I had him capped at 25. I don't know what the final number is just yet, but I had him capped at 25.
Okay.
And just like the field, with these pitchers, we got like pure contact guys, right? The Cuetos, the Irvins, the Kellers, the guys that don't bode a lot of confidence. And then we have guys that either have a plus matchup to boost them like Alex Wood, or guys that we just know are strikeout guys. And Sandoval is one of those guys. He can get you some strikeouts, 23% K rate overall this season. Last year was at 26%. The swing and strike rate is still 12%. And while the matchup, it doesn't make me feel warm and fuzzy in terms of just like, I believe in the upside for France, Rodriguez, Suarez. This is a Gundacker spot. The K rates through this Mariners lineup, J-Rod, Suarez, Torrens, Upton, Taylor Trammell, all those guys probably give you an aggregate of like 28 to 30, almost 29% K rate since the beginning of last year against lefties. So this is a ceiling spot. This is definitely a both sides of the fence spot for me as well. But if I were to, pick a couple names out of a hat of guys that could potentially have 30 fantasy points tonight, I do think Sandoval kind of fits that description. Obviously the more likely outcome is like mid-20s or 20 plus, but 20 plus I think that dog will hunt on this slate. And Sandoval is a guy that probably gets you 90 plus to 100 pitches. He's pretty well stretched out here. So I'm in agreement with him being one of the guys to target. I've him capped at 25%. If I land at 25%, so what? I think it's taken a little bit of negative leverage, but it's not too much that I gotta, rewrite everything. Like we'll talk about Taijuan Walker. I have really never played that guy. So I'm just, I get to trade off all of that potential ownership to the field and just kind of absorb it with a guy like Sandoval. Sandoval right now, I think will probably be my either tied for 3rd or 4th highest owned pitcher.
How much do you think you're getting to? And we're going to talk about them individually. You've already talked a lot. It's just in reference to what's happening tonight with Verlander, but how much do you anticipate getting to on DK with the 2 options, Sandoval and Verlander, Sandoval and Nola?
I'll have more Sandoval and Verlander,
Okay.
probably, but I will say I don't I don't really control that. Like I set my exposures, you know what I mean, and let it rip. But I would imagine, I don't know, there'd probably be 8% overlap between the two.
Okay.
But
And it's just a matter of setting lower exposures to Nola as a result, as opposed to Verlander. That's what the product of you getting to Nola and Sandoval less is, as opposed to Sandoval and Verlander, right?
Yes, and just
Okay.
the projection. I have a kind of a more favorable projection here on
Verlander.
Sandoval.
Yeah. Or Sandoval and Verlander.
Or Sandoval versus Nola, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. So just curious, because again, when talking about this in the backdrop of it there, and FanDuel, you're just going to have that one option. So again, I don't know how much that's going to change with those two guys. All right, so let's look at the stack here, and knowing, of course, that there's going to be an opportunity on the other side of it, not with Sandoval so much, but with Flexen. Is this where you're attacking this Angel stack? You're not losing a ton of negative leverage to the field, even though they are the second worst negative leverage score, meaning like it's not minus 18% here. It's 3.8, which is workable.
Yeah, these smaller slates, I mean, those are just like yesterday, I think we had Padres at like 30% or something, like, it's when that happens, then okay. But on this, on any like 8-game slate or something, like if I see every team at like 10 or less percent, I could be pretty creative and don't feel like I have to really cut hairs, because a lot of that ownership is really going to spike on one or two guys, and then you can just be creative within the stack. So I don't overthink it on slates like this. 3% is very, very nominal. So as far as the Angels go, yeah, they make a lot of sense here. 1 through 4, I like quite a bit. Chris Flexen, 5.26 expected ERA, 1.42 WHIP, just a 16% K rate, and his barrel rate over 10%. Ward, Trout, Ohtani, Walsh all make a ton of sense. Those guys collectively probably have a 900 plus OPS between them. It's just a really, really good spot. And then if you can, lean on Chris Flexen's propensity to pitch the contact, you can overcome Brandon Marsh's 33% K rate, maybe tap into some of his power, his upside. So I do like the Angel stack. I at the moment had Angels at 12%, so I'm
That's a little over.
Yeah, a little bit. And I have no plans to get to Chris Flexen in my player pool tonight.
Right. And I assume that you're working multiple angles here with this Angel stack, where it's not just working the 5, that you're working subs in there as well. This is just going to be a popular opportunity for you to attack Flexen on multiple levels.
Yeah, and not just Flexen. I've said it before. You win cash starting pitchers, attacking starters. You win cash games. Bullpens can win you tournaments. Both these bullpens have a knack for giving up bombs. The Angels have 124 home run per 9 plus bullpen rating, which is 24 above league average, and the Mariners 132 home run per 9 plus. So the matchup, it should be 9 innings of quality baseball. And this is this game 1 or 2 of a doubleheader?
Game 1. Because
the
second one is tonight.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
I was gonna. Then sometimes either coaches, either Flexen gets smacked up and they go quick, or they let them wear it for a little bit, and knowing they have another game for that bullpen. So it's something to think about. But yeah, I'm definitely on the Angels. And with that said, because of the bullpen and because of the Mariners in this particular lineup, like I think I said it earlier, but this is the Gundacker spot for me, where the Seattle stack is certainly going to be something that I go after. And, compared to like Baltimore, the White Sox, the Pirates, I believe in their upside. I believe in their floor too, with stolen bases and stuff like that. We have them just at a 1.5% ownership. So that's half of our top stack percentage. So if you like pennies on the dollar for positive leverage, I think it makes sense to get there as well. And I will as well. And like I said, the bullpen would also give us some hope. And 1 through Rodriguez, Ty France, Suarez would probably be like my 3 favorite options to get to. But I wouldn't really set any sub stack only rules for the Mariners. I think they could flatten out if I needed to.
Yeah, it makes sense, especially if you're even looking at in the backside, pardon me, of countering whatever you're getting with Sandoval, that 26 to 27% overall with the field. So it answers exactly what you're doing with Seattle. I'll leave you with this. It doesn't matter if you're out there playing Prize Picks or if you're here in PA or where you can legally place a wager, but Seattle, as bad as things have been, Seattle is fourth in all baseball and average runs per first inning at 0.87 at home. This is, as you've laid out multiple times in different angles, a fantastic matchup against Chris Flexen. So you should have two things working against at least one of these teams scoring a first run. If you want to bet it, if you want to work it into your Prize Picks ticket, the least I can do is just try and contribute like for 90 seconds on the show as you're making people some money, brother. All right.
Hey, Sandoval, 12% walk rate to righties. You walk Julio Rodriguez, he steals second base, and then you can manufacture him home.
You don't even need the Angels at that point. I love it, man. All right, so we'll keep it moving. And again, hit the thumbs up button, please, if you haven't already, and make sure you're subscribed here. New name, same drill. You know how things work here. And speaking of which, the Stokastic Plus tools, everything we have here, the Platinum Pass, again, just because the name has changed doesn't mean that the tools or the value of everything out there has changed at all. So Stokastic.com is where you can get the Plus Platinum package. Again, we could say 50% on your first month. So just click the link below. And when you sign up and join, use our promo code MLB Live, all one word. It's the name of the show here. And you're going to get 50% off right away, half off your first month of Stokastic Plus Platinum. Again, just because the name has changed doesn't mean anything else has. We want you to jump in, take advantage of this. If you've been waiting, I know a lot of people are kind of just waiting. And look, that's the nature of it, right? We all love deals. We love to hunt. So you think, I'm gonna bleed these guys out until I get one of these 50% deals. Bang, here it is. There's no more excuses. So pop on there again, MLB Live, all one word, caps. That's the name of the show. All right, my friend, let's keep it moving here. And we go from Seattle to, just want to make sure, into Cincinnati. So we know the drill, Great American Ballpark, the bandbox that it is. Pitching matchup here. Let's just kind of look at that with the ballpark in the backdrop, knowing that both of these teams going to have a pretty decent run projection.
Yeah, this is definitely a stack the ballpark spot. I love Great American Small Park. The run totals for the Brewers knocking on the door. Really, it's a 10 total. Both teams implying for 5, kind of a pick 'em here. So that's kind of, as long as I log into a slate and I see that it isn't going to cost me more than 10% on either stack. And in this case, we got 14% field ownership on Milwaukee, 10% chance to be in a top stack. Cincinnati, 7% chance to be in a top stack, 6% ownership. So not egregious numbers. I personally have Milwaukee at 12%, and I have the Reds at 12%. So I'm a little bit above. But yeah, it's just going after the ballpark here. Jason Alexander, to his credit, hasn't allowed a homer yet. He's an extreme ground ball pitcher. But sometimes bad things happen to good people. So I will say that has me spooked a little bit. Maybe I should come down from 12%, maybe get to like 8%. I'd still have a little bit of leverage on the field. But with his pitching to pure contact here, he has allowed a 350 plus average to lefties, 300 plus average to righties, and just a 4.7% swing and strike rate on an 8% overall K rate. He has an expected ERA at 4.6, a whip of 1.74. He's just surviving. He has a 2 ERA, and that says the regression monster is sleeping under his bed, and today might be the day he comes out and plays. The Ashcraft on the bump for the Reds here. He has a 3.28 expected ERA, so definitely more respectable, but his strikeout rate is not much higher, 13% K rate, but an 8.5% swing and strike rate. So essentially, Eytan, we got 2 contact pitchers in probably the most hitter-friendly ballpark on the slate.
I love it.
So we're stacking it up.
Yeah, and you have one guy at 8,300 tag. So the price alone, I think, would place him out, right?
Yeah, I mean, so like
you're going to get leverage. I get it. I just want to clarify that. Sorry.
If you're over 8K and you have a sub 15% K rate with a sub 10% swing and strike rate, I really got nothing for you unless it's a slate that I just can't. There's no getting around it, or if it's like the Pirates. But in this case, I have no interest in either.
Yeah, no, it makes so much sense here. So the focus is clearly on offense, and just looking at where we have both of these, Milwaukee's right there at the top. So let's just handle that. We don't want to bury the lead by any means. They're going to be the least as far as the worst negative leverage score. But again, at -4.5, it's not like you referenced earlier with the Padres team. I think it was San Diego or San Fran, right? Just ridiculous. San Diego, right? Through the roof of course. So Milwaukee at Cincinnati taking on, and look, even with Ashcraft there, as we know, and even more of a deterrent with that number, this is the highest owned and top projected stack.
Yeah, it's they're in a great spot.
Are you over the field here at 14.4?
No, I'm actually under the field at 2%. Like I'm at 2% below the field projected was. So I'm over the field on the red side though.
Okay, but really it's just a matter of trying to gain some leverage back with Milwaukee. Or do you not like the matchup as much compared to the field, maybe with a couple of
that had nothing to do with the ownership effort. I was just when I do my initial research, I just start planting numbers on teams that just kind of feel right. And 12% felt right to me. So and I feel like that's a fine spot. If I undercut a little bit, I get there. So I don't really feel that and throughout the change. I'm a little bit I wonder if I'm a little too high on the Reds here, but talking through Alexander, the numbers say he's due for some regression, although it is only 16 innings. So maybe he's also got to develop a little bit more, but his ground ball rate is really stinking high, especially against righties at over 70%. So if he keeps that up, high ground ball rates usually coincide with the high average allowed, but they also coincide with ground into double plays and no homers. And that's kind of what we're chasing here, right?
Yeah. So with Cincinnati alone, you mentioned you might be a little too high comparison to the 6% that we have projected. How much higher are you?
I had 12%.
Okay. So 12 basically for both teams.
Yes. I was just stacking the ballpark blindly.
Which makes sense, right?
Yeah.
I mean, especially from a pitching standpoint too. All right, real quick. And just because we have this dynamic here, how deep do you go with substacks just because of this matchup and knowing that you can take advantage of from one-offs to three-man substacks because of this matchup and the park?
Right. So like on Fantasy Cruncher, you could set your teams that you want 5-man stacks, and then you can have more stacks. And usually I'll put like those at 3-mans.
Yep.
There are some teams where I will get no 5-mans, and then there are teams where I get 5-mans and 3-mans. These are two teams where I'll have both 5-man stacks and 3-man stacks. So I have them at 12% on the 5-mans, and then I think I have them both at like 15% on the 3-mans.
Okay. Which makes sense too, because you don't want to overlook this and simply load up on the 5s. And if you're working secondaries, these two, and again, we'll talk about some others as well, but especially with Cincinnati, since you were so heavy to the projection of where we have, I just wanted to see that from, again, more of a secondary substack standpoint, but it makes a lot of sense there. All right. Mets game here as we move on. Marlins in town, and you mentioned Walker. They're not playing him pretty much at all. Is that the same with Garrett on the other side, or is this just stay away from Walker night?
Yeah. I just never played Taijuan Walker, and people do. and it's last I'll tell you, that Angels game was a little annoying, but we did see that Angels team go through a stretch where even Michael Wacha was going off on them. They were hurt and banged up. I don't think that Taijuan Walker is ever a play when he is getting almost 20% ownership. And so while there are spots where I'll take negative leverage because of a Verlander, a pitcher and a matchup I believe in, I don't believe in Taijuan Walker. He is overperforming his almost 4 expected ERA, his 4.5 Sierra, his 16% K rate on the season, his 10% swing and strike rate. And the Marlins, you watch somebody touch a hot stove, burn themselves, and then they come back and touch it again. The Marlins are really scrappy against righties this year, 113 WRC plus. So this just feels like one of those spots where, it's a calculated fade at that ownership. I can get back 20% leverage here, and I hope that it completely fails for the field that plays him. So yeah, I'm all the way out on Walker. He has a 13% strikeout rate to righties so far this season, and this version of the Marlins lineup has only 2 lefties, and one of those lefties is Jazz Chisholm, and that's not a guy that bodes well for him either. So yeah, I'm all the way out on Walker. I'll let the field have it. If that burns me, then hey, that's just the game we play. And as far as Garrett goes, I didn't have him in my player pool at the moment. I wasn't quite sure if it was probably. Yeah,
K rate is pretty high, but it's the matchup that might be a deterrent.
Yeah, that's exactly right. A 1.4 whip too, so you might waste some of those pitches with a yeah. I don't have any Garrett at the moment, but I would say because of that K rate, like I wouldn't talk anyone off of him. I just don't. But I definitely have no Walker, and I'm hoping that is the spot. Not only am I fading Walker, but I'll get to some Marlins exposure as well. It's kind of like a double leverage in the field here, because if I believe in his failure, I should believe in the success of the Marlins.
A little balance. Yeah. So if you look at 3 guys that are in that 67, 66, we talked about a couple here already, but Keller, Garrett, Alexander, you're getting the Garrett the least, if at all.
So I have none.
No Alexander. That's right.
Yeah, I don't have any of those guys right now, but I would say that like I would be open to suggestions on Garrett. And like if you land on Garrett, I definitely would talk about anyone who can dance with the Astros in Minute Maid and walk away with a solid fantasy score. I think it's worth having. I'll do a little bit digging. I do like that 14% swinging strike rate that we saw that we have seen so far. The 24% K rate. It's just really a matchup that scares me. The Mets just a 20% K rate to lefty so far, and in this lineup, only JD Davis and Tomas Nido have really egregious K numbers. So I just kind of got enough respect for the Mets where I didn't want to target them, but I do think 10 to 15 fantasy points from a 6.7 at a SP2 spot would be fine. So if you think that's likely for Garrett, I wouldn't talk you down.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. And Cy Ace Marlins lineup has a ton of strikeouts in it. Question, can Walker take advantage? And that was your point, which is the Ks are there. It seems like that for both sides. Like the Ks are there, except for this specific matchup. And that's what's hurting Walker's chances to a greater extent. Garrett, you can stay away from that in general. But that sounded like, just to kind of answer for you, that sounded like the matchup here is going to trump going after the fact that there are Ks in that lineup.
There are, but that doesn't get you strikeouts in and of itself. You still have to be a good pitcher to strike out a major league hitter. Right. There are like Suarez's and Wisdoms and Gallows that'll strike out 40%. But even those guys, like you don't necessarily just get them on 3 pitches. And while the Marlins have a propensity to give you a couple of these guys 1 and 4 K rates, as a team, just a 22% K rate on the season. And Walker's just a 16% K rate. The swing and strike rate still double digits, but it's not like anything crazy. But yeah, it's one of those spots where it's a potential boost for Walker's strikeout rate to go up, but it's also the boost for the Marlins strikeout rate to go down because of the pitcher they're facing not necessarily being a K guy. So yeah, it's baseball's fickle like that, man. You don't necessarily, like, Zach Greinke doesn't become a 10 strikeout guy just because he's facing a team that strikeouts the most, No,
it's a great point. And again, I knew your answer from like what you were going to say from a broader standpoint, but you focusing on that, because I guarantee you a lot of people on the surface make that mistake. Oh, a lot of Ks in that lineup. I mean, look, we'll talk about it tonight with the Phillies in Washington. There are Ks in that lineup. Now, a little different because of Gray there, but I see it, and I'm glad that you explained it to that level, because I guarantee you, man, there are people that just look at, oh, are there Ks or they're not Ks, and they play off that, and they probably get burned more often than that because they're not looking at the specific matchup.
Yeah, it's kind of like I don't know, DVP and NBA is a little controversial at times, right?
Yep.
Just because, like, I don't know, a team gives up the most points in the paint. Well, we expect, I don't know, Dwight Powell to go in there and drop 50 or whatever. Well, that's not really the case. You still have to be somebody that can score or has, you know, the propensity to put up high shot volume, and you still got to be a pitcher that can miss bats and and get strikeouts.
All right, let's move to Houston and Verlander. Verlander, man, you've talked about him a couple of different times here. Nearly half the field is getting to him. A lot of negative leverage for this guy, but between the matchup and just it being Verlander, you're definitely working him in. It's just a matter of how compared to the rest of the field.
Yeah, right now Verlander's sitting as my highest owned pitcher, and I know I'm taking negative leverage here. Like I said, I'll trade the field, all of the 18% Tom Walker, and I'll just fill in the gap there with more Verlander. Verlander, he's starting to become a name in the Cy Young conversation, which is kind of crazy considering his age and the Tommy John and everything that he's been through. And the White Sox have not lived up to expectations, especially against righties. Their righty-lefty splits on the season are so drastic. An 86 WRC plus as a team against righties with just a 6% walk rate. And this version of the White Sox lineup, we're not leading off with Tim Anderson. We're leading off with Danny Mendick and his 120 ISO against righties for the last 2 years. This is a lineup that definitely can get got here. So I am, I will be in on Justin Verlander quite a bit. I just think it's a strong matchup, and I think his offense is in a decent spot to maybe pick him up a win. So he's definitely my highest owned FanDuel guy. He's coming in as my highest owned DraftKings guy. Now he's not like above and beyond everyone else, but he is above.
But you're lower to the field as far as that 45.8 on DK.
Yes. I'm definitely lower than that. Right now I'm at 30%.
Okay. Which I mean, when you're looking at it where you had capped initially, just wanted to get to.
Oh, wait. I'm at 38. I'm at 38%. My bad.
Okay. No. Good. I'm glad. So, all right, about 6-7% below, which is not a wide gap by any means. Do you know what the difference is on FanDuel? You mentioned that, well, he's at 33%, but he's still going to be your highest owned guy on FanDuel as well.
Yeah.
Right?
On FanDuel, I'm at 40%.
Okay. So over the field there. Right. And look, you have the nature of the one pitcher. So less risk you want to take. I get it, especially with this matchup here. You said this at the beginning, so I think I'm saying it verbatim, but it might be paraphrasing to an extent, man. But no Johnny Cueto tonight, right?
You can't keep getting away with this. Yeah, man. Cueto, I'm an advanced metrics guy here, and Cueto just really doesn't stir any confidence to me. A 19% K rate, 8% swing and strike rate, 1.2 whip. Astros are really, really tough to pitch against. Last night we saw it. They threw a party. I don't know. I think the janitor pinch hit homer, dude. It was wild. When Michael Brantley's homering, it's a tough time. 1 through 7 I like a lot, but the Astros are definitely one of the stacks I'm going after, and I have no interest in Cueto. I just don't really believe that there's an optimal outcome for Cueto here, like a slate breaking outcome that gives me 25 plus, and we have him a 7% chance to be in the top 2 with a 1% ownership. So I just, in the interest of positive leverage, letting the robot do the thinking, you could justify it, but I don't have any interest.
But Houston on the other side is not like what we had with Milwaukee and the highest projected. We have a couple of others in the next 2 games in both Texas and Philadelphia, respectively, that are projected higher. Even Tampa, where we opened up with. So especially as much as you either love Houston or despise Cueto, this could be a really good opportunity to get above the field and not really lose much leverage.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems like the Astros and the Dodgers, like these teams always come in pretty low owned. I guess it's more of a price point thing. Altuve's basically 6K, Bregman, Alvarez, and Tucker. They're going to cost you. So you're probably not going to get an onslaught Astros stack coinciding with like a lot of Verlander. But if you do like some of those more modest price guys, the Alex Woods and of the slate, I think the Astros are an incredible stack, and the opportunity at this ownership is really, really good. Just a 6% ownership share on DraftKings. You don't have to do much to match that, but you also don't have to do much to get over it. I currently am sitting on Astros. I have 12% Astros stack.
Yeah, I'm not surprised at all at that.
Yeah, so I'm double the field on that. Last night was a good sign, and backing up Cueto is certainly a beatable bullpen here. To Cueto's credit, as bad as I think he is in terms of strikeouts and average allowed, he hasn't been giving up a ton of homers, and that's never really been his game anyway. He usually keeps the ball on the ground, a little tricky with it. But I'm just kind of hoping for a quick hook on him, and then the Astros talent, just kind of betting on them to come through like they did last night. I mean, Giolito, I believe, was the starting pitcher last night, and that didn't stop the Astros from going off.
All right. One thing just with the White Sox here, and it's only because half of the field is getting to Verlander. So staying away from Cueto, but looking at the bats, and the likelihood is way more often than not, Verlander is going to victimize that lineup. But because you're getting half of the field on DK and a third of the field on FanDuel, how much, if at all, is there any value, even if you're at the field at that like 1.15%?
For White Sox stacks?
Yeah. Or is this, again, you're donating 10%?
I mean, hey, Justin Verlander can bleed red. Seattle got him, right? So it's not impossible. And if 2%, 3%, 4% get you there, sure. I think this is a pretty short list of guys I would put some stock in. Vaughn, Robert, Abreu, Pollock, maybe some Berger. Yeah, if you're just hoping that he just ain't got it, you don't have to give up much, and you're ultra leveraging everything field wise and stack ownership wise. So I think it's fair. I'm kind of like all year long, I've been waiting for the White Sox to be good. And I guess this version of their lineup is probably one of their least expected, like no Moncada, no Anderson, guys like that. So this is even worse than their average lineup. But I think it mathematically, and we talked about, it's a good process. It's probably a good process to get yourself 2-4% of White Sox stacks if you're heavily invested in Verlander.
All right, let's move. I'm sorry.
Or just opposite the field.
To counter. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's move to last two here. And we've got Hearn and Garcia on the hill. This is probably going to be more of a stack game for you, I'm guessing, even with Detroit, because of how cheap they are. There's going to be some maneuverability there, but I imagine if you were just going to cut this game into quarters, the Texas stack would be the most appealing across the board.
Yeah, I don't know. I say yes.
Okay, there was hesitation. I love it though. I didn't expect that.
It's because like Hearn is not like great, especially against righties, and he's facing a lot of righties. But the pushback is the Tigers have no power. So like I want to attack Hearn and his 12% walk rate to righties, is almost 300 average allowed, the 1+ homer per nine. He has a 186 homer per nine on the road. Like I want to pick on that, but man, do the Tigers make it rough to buy in.
So they're so cheap though. Does that
they
help?
are. Yeah. I don't have any full Tiger, or I have a couple full Tiger stacks, but I have a lot more Tigers ownership just because they're so cheap.
Yeah.
That they're filling holes. Like Robbie Grossman, Eric Haas in the cleanup spot. We know he can show power. Javi Baez, last couple of years, although he has a high K rate overall against lefties, he's been holding a 900 OPS. So I have more Tigers filling in the cracks in my stacks than I probably should. And then also because of Austin Meadows going down, Riley Green got called up. And I think after Rushman got called up, Riley Green is the top prospect in baseball. So with him and Torkelson down there, like there's some hope here going against Hearn. So it's not a snap call for me between the two, like it probably should be, but it's basically because I don't believe in Taylor Hearn that much.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was the big thing, was the matchup that, because everybody's going to see how cheap they are. So it's just a matter of working that in. against the matchup. Now, the flip side, though, is just taking advantage of Garcia. And we really have a decent number overall to where the projected ownership is to where the stack is for Texas. It's a little bit of a negative leverage score. But again, on a 9-game slate, you're not losing a ton by attacking Garcia.
Yeah, I think at 8%, we have an 8 to 9% own. I was sitting at 10%. So yeah, I'm pretty much even, slightly above. And the Rangers kind of the same thing, right? Like I think it makes sense for them when it comes to the bomb detector. Semien, Seager, Cole Calhoun, and Brad Miller all have magic numbers for me. And Rony Garcia has certainly allowed a high fly ball rate and high hard contact rate to lefties so far. 1.4 home run per night. It's a really good spot for those lefties. Slight pushback here being that it's in Comerica, and that's a park that can steal some of those home runs. But I just play the matchups here. I'm way more in on these offenses. I don't have any of either pitcher at the moment.
Let's look at the final game here. We've got Aaron Nola, and on the other side, and we talked about Josiah Gray a little bit in comparison, but Nola, when we brought up just looking at a couple of different opportunities you'd have for pay up options, especially on DK, right? With the 2 pay up option possibilities, Nola wasn't as high as you had with Verlander and Sandoval. So where are you with Nola first? And then kind of in the backdrop, there might be, and again, this is going to be where you will apply if it's just their K's in this Phillies lineup, or if you actually like the matchup with Gray taking advantage of the K's. It does seem like it's hit or miss. The ball's going to fly or they're going to K. So let's start with Nola first, then kind of look a little bit with Gray.
So I'm sitting on 20% Nola.
Okay.
We got him at 31% ownership. It's really just I'm worried about the strikeouts in this Nationals lineup. The team as a whole has been striking out about 20%. So 1 in 5 is not, it definitely isn't the best, but it could be worse. There's a lot of scrappy bats in here that do concern me. So just like on a 1v1 with Nola versus Verlander, I just kind of liked Verlander's matchup a little bit more for K's and, not Juan Soto in that White Sox lineup. But I obviously, I think Nola still has a extremely high ceiling, and he absolutely has a chance to be the top scoring pitcher on this slate. We just watched him drop, 31 against Milwaukee, and then he curtain calls it with a 20 against Miami. And that's kind of, why I'm bullish or skittish on Taijuan Walker is when Aaron Nola is not getting a strikeout printing against the Marlins. Why do I think, Taijuan Walker will? So, yeah. I just think Nola gives me a better floor. Verlander gives me a little better floor than Nola more times than not. But Nola, like I said, 20% isn't nothing. That's still one of my top 4 owned pitchers. And yeah, it's just the matchup here. I don't know that he's going to go off with strikeouts against this matchup.
Yeah, and the thing, Gray's price tag alone might be enough to kind of move away. But I am curious how he matches up with this lineup to where we know that there can be Ks. I'm going to start using that phrase. Like, there can be Ks in the Phillies lineup if Gray can take advantage.
Yeah, this is the ultimate tournament play. I think Josiah Gray, one way or the other, or another, might decide this slate, whether he's dropping 30 or he's got negative 15. To his advantage today, this Phillies team that it will be playing their 3rd baseball game in 24 hours.
Yep.
They are not putting out Harper and Rhys Hoskins, and those are arguably like the 2 best Phillies hitters. Obviously, Castellanos and Schwarber are in the mix as well. But
Harper was out last night too,
right? And then he pinch hit and
had
a double on it.
But my home run prop because I wanted it to be voided, but that's neither here nor there. Sorry.
Yeah, so it is a watered down Phillies lineup versus what it could be with Hoskins and Harper. So that's advantage Gray, and Gray still gives us a 26% K rate, almost 13% swing and strike rate. Just everything else is really, really scary. If he's not striking you out, it's a problem, especially against lefties. So far, he has a 3+ homer per night to lefties and an 18% walk rate. That's not what you want. And Kyle Schwarber, that's a big problem to get around right off the bat. So this is a Gundacker spot by default. If Josiah Gray was like 8K, I would have to make a bigger meditation here on how much I would get to Josiah Gray. I capped him at 6% right now, just just in case. And I'm still a little bit more invested in the Philly stack, but I absolutely concede that there's a chance that Gray could be a great play here. It's just think at that price point, I'm not that far from a Nola or a Verlander when it comes to MLB pricing that I had to absorb that risk, but I do have 6%.
Real quick on the way out, what about on FanDuel where he drops enough? It's not a significant price drop overall, but it's enough to put him in like the Springs, the Wood type category now to where he's not standing alone on DraftKings.
Yes. I mean, you need that quality start. So you got to believe he's going 6 innings. I think it's fair, and he does have a lot of strikeout potential. It's hard to imply for the win and the quality start, but yeah, a little bit cheaper makes him a little bit more viable. But again, in a one pitcher side, I feel less inclined to make that risk because I can open up more Wood, more Verlander, Nola, guys like that. So I'd probably still be around that 5-6%.
Okay. And all things equal, if the price tag and the jump changed, but you did have Harper and Hoskins in, then at that point, you're definitely staying away because the likelihood of him getting 6 with that full lineup is very low.
Yeah, it changes a lot.
Okay. Well, Mike wants to hear you say before we get out of here, the Phillies are going to win. No?
I still think they do. Like Hoskins and Harper will probably still pinch hit somewhere in this game in a big spot if they need to. So I still think they're
on a home run. Right. Good call.
Yeah.
All right. At Gundacker, as you know, on Twitter. And if you're playing the WNBA, my goodness, make sure you get to this man's channel here because you guys are blowing up. I got to shout Chris out. He put me onto that, man. So now I know where to go to get NBA insight as well, man. It's baseball and WNBA. That's it right now. And golf.
Yeah, I cannot wait for September. That's all I can say. Hurry up. Wake me up when August ends.
I love it. All right, y'all. Appreciate everybody hanging. Thumbs up, subscribe. You know the drill. Thanks to Mike Austin. Have a great night. Great rest of the afternoon. We'll see you soon.